Turn with me, if you will, to Matthew. Let's quickly go there. Matthew chapter 6 is where I want us to look this morning. We've been talking about the Lord's Prayer. And we're not talking about changing things. We're studying it. And Pastor Brent has been leading us through this the last several weeks. And it's been nice to note that Jesus, not only does he say, hey, praying, that's a good thing, do that. You know, we get a lot of those commandments, do that. That's a good thing, do it. But Jesus also teaches us, that he shows us how to pray. And so it's important to study this, and we're going to do this together. As I said, Pastor Brent has been leading us through this study, Can You Hear Me Now? I don't know if you've ever been there, but sometimes it seems like prayer just kind of, falls to the side. And maybe we do it, maybe we don't, but even when we do it, we're not heard. And we can ask, God, can you hear me now? Let's read in Matthew chapter 6. I'm going to start with verse 9. Jesus talking to his disciples have said, how do we pray? And Jesus says, verse 9, this then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And give us today our daily bread. I'm going to stop right there. The prayer goes on, but for our purposes today, I want us to look at that verse 11. Give us today our daily bread. I think it's important for us to understand something about prayer. And we've talked about this in previous weeks. Prayer is not just asking for things from God. Okay, prayer is not some type of thing where we make a list and then Jesus checks it twice, and if you're naughty or nice, you get some of that or all of that or whatever. Prayer is not making God a genie and we hope he grants our wishes. Okay, and we kind of understand that. We don't always pray that way. Sometimes we want to pray, and God, I want this, I want this, I want this, and I've been a good boy this year and give it, But that's not what prayer is all about. We've learned that prayer is about starting a relationship with God in which there's communication back and forth. And prayer is so important, and he's given that as a gift to us. But what I like about this in verse 11 is a recognition almost from Jesus that, you know what? Here's something to ask for. It is okay to ask for something. Give us today our daily bread. And I think it's even a recognition that God knows that we all have needs. We all have needs. In fact, that's the theme of our message today. Need, we elevated it a little bit so you could see it a little better than having it down here. But need, we all have needs. And we know what those needs are generally, kind of the survival needs. We all need food and water, right? Our daily bread, so to speak. We need shelter, clothing, some kind of protection from the elements. We need, what else do we need? We have these emotional needs. We need to love and to be loved, maybe to respect and be respected. We need a purpose in our lives. We need things that motivate us and give us meaning. So we have a lot of those needs, and here we see Jesus saying, pray for that. Give us today our daily bread. We all have needs. I think we need to ask ourselves this morning, how do we meet those needs? If we recognize, and God knows, that we all have needs, how then do we have those needs met? Okay? So how do we get our food and water? How do we get those things? There are other needs as well, needs of security. We need to feel safe. Need for information sometimes. You need information. How do we meet those needs? Talk to these guys down here real quick. How do you, if you need to know something, what's your need? There it is. He's holding up his phone. Yes. That was not always the case. I'll show my age a little bit here, but at one time in my life, when I needed to know something, say for a school project or something like that, we'd go to a bookshelf in our house, and there was this big row of books, right? And they were all the same size and all the same color. The letters on them were different. It's called an encyclopedia, right? Remember? Yeah, what's that? Yeah. And so you did a project on, I don't know, Saturn. You'd go and you'd have to find it, and they were not ordered by likes, okay? They were ordered by alphabetical order. And you'd go and you'd find the S book and you pull it out and you read about Saturn. You could read about all this stuff. Long time ago, ancient history now. Today, if you need to know information, what do? Pull your phone out or you get your laptop or your tablet or whatever and you Google it. You do a search. I'll tell you what happened to me. This is about a year ago. We decided we needed a dog. Okay, CJ decided we needed a dog. Okay? Forget the fact that we already had a dog. We needed another dog. And so CJ decides we're going to get an American Akita. That's the breed of the dog. She wanted a big dog. An American Akita. I didn't know anything about an American Akita. I didn't know anything about that breed. So I decided, what do I do? Okay, I'm going to go Google it. I'm going to do a search, right? I found this, what I thought was a really cool website, and here's how it worked. You take a picture of your dog, and it uploads the picture, and the website scans the face of the dog and somehow comes up with the breed for that dog just from scanning that picture. And then it gives you some information about the breed, tips on how to care for it, what to expect. I thought this was really cool. I said, CJ, come here. We're going to go over here. We're going to get our laptop on, and we're going to upload this picture, and we're going to see what the website can tell us about our dog. Guys, can we show the results from this website? So the website did not scan the dog's face. It scanned CJ's face, and it identified her as an English Cocker Spaniel. And then notice the information it gave about this breed. Outgoing, it says, needs to be told and told again. Athletic. Yeah. I will not comment on the accuracy of the description, but my need for dog breed information was not met that day. Love you, honey. We all have needs. And sometimes where we look for those needs, where we look to have those needs fulfilled, are not met. We've got an example in Scripture, not just of Jesus praying, give us today our daily bread, but it's a connection that he's saying there from using that daily bread metaphor. That's a connection in Scripture that started way, way back. So Exodus chapter 16, we won't read it this morning, but do you know the story of the Israelites? You know the story way back. The Israelites were God's chosen people, but the problem was they were slaves in Egypt. So God was their Lord, but Pharaoh was the one in charge. Pharaoh was the one enslaving them and oppressing them and telling them what to do and where to go and everything about their lives just controlling. But then God said, no, that can't stand, and he rose up Moses. And Moses was the leader, and Moses goes to Pharaoh and said, these are God's people, let God's people go. And Pharaoh says, God's people? No, these are Pharaoh's slaves. And these people aren't going anywhere. They're my slaves. And then, of course, we have this amazing story of the 10 plagues, and God basically using those 10 plagues to deconstruct Pharaoh's sense of control and his power. And by the end, you see the Egyptians and the Israelites both see Pharaoh has no power. He has no real control. God is in control. And so the Israelites, who were slaves, now get to go free. And God has this great plan for them, and they've got the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. It's going to be great. But in Exodus chapter 16, the Israelites are no longer slaves. They're no longer being oppressed. They're freed now, but they're not in the promised land either. They're in the wilderness, the in-between, so to speak. And in Exodus chapter 16, something very unique happens. The people start to think. They start to realize, you know what? It was bad back there. I know we were slaves, and that's not a good thing. But man, back there, I knew where my next meal was coming from. I knew where I was going to get my daily bread, so to speak. But here in the wilderness, I know, God, you got a plan for us back there. You got a plan for us coming up. But here in the wilderness, I don't know where my next meal is coming from. I don't know how to handle that. They were freed people, but they still kind of had a slave mentality. And that's when they realized something is very important, and God acted. The truth is, the source of your daily bread is master of your life. The source of your daily bread is master of your life. Knowing that back here, Pharaoh was the one who was given the daily bread. Pharaoh was the one providing security. Pharaoh was giving the Israelites at least what they need. Now, he was not a good ruler. He was a tyrant. They were slaves, but at least here they were getting their daily bread. And God says, no, the source of your daily bread is master of your life. Pharaoh is no longer master. And so in Exodus chapter 16, something really cool happens. All of a sudden one day, appearing on the ground was this bread-like, white, flaky substance that tasted sweet like honey. It was called manna, literally bread from heaven. And it came from God. And for the next 40 years, as the people journeyed from slavery through the wilderness to the promised land, during that wilderness time, God's people received their daily bread. They received manna. And it was from God, and that's so important because the source of your daily bread is master of your life. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 8. This is not just about bread. God tells us exactly what it was about in Deuteronomy chapter 8. He says, He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Because it's important for us to know the purpose of our daily bread. What's the purpose of daily bread? In the wilderness, you had to eat. You were hungry and you needed something. But manna was not the end game. That was not the final plan. Remember, they were slaves, and God had them going to this amazing promised land, this amazing, where you didn't need manna. It was flowing with milk and honey. It was this amazing place. But they weren't there yet. The manna, the purpose of this daily bread, was to sustain you through your journey. To sustain you through your journey. And Jesus understood this, that the source of the bread was so important. If it comes from Pharaoh, Pharaoh's master. But if it comes from God, then God is the one in charge. And so years later, as Jesus is on the scene, he's about to begin his ministry. And what does he do? It's such a cool thing to realize. He is baptized. Before he starts his ministry, he's baptized. And then he goes directly into where? The wilderness. And there's Jesus in the wilderness, and he's fasting, and he's hungry. He's got to be hungry, and Satan comes up to him, and Satan tempts him. And Satan says, hey, you hungry? You hungry? Here's some stones. Why don't you just turn those stones into bread? And I've struggled, this is in Matthew chapter 4, I've struggled with that sometimes because I thought, what's the harm? Who cares? Yes, I know Jesus is fasting, and he's made that commitment, but he's been fasting a while now. Well, what's the harm in just getting some daily bread there? It's because Jesus knew the source of your daily bread is master of your life. And so the temptation here was not just about bread. The temptation, what Satan was saying is, hey, Jesus, you know what? This is a tough time. You're in the wilderness. Why don't you just do this on your own? Why don't you just become your own source for daily bread? Just do it by yourself. You don't need help. You don't need the Father. Let yourself be the source. Just do it by yourself. You can do that. It'd be so much easier that way, right? You don't have to depend on anybody. Do it by yourself. The problem with that is, who's the source? Your daily bread whoever the source is of your daily bread is your master. If I become my own source, then I'm my master. Then I'm not living for God. Now I'm living for me. And Jesus understood that, and he goes on with his ministry in his Matthew chapter 14. You know, you've heard this story, the amazing story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. How cool is that? Jesus feeding the 5,000, where there's 2 fish and 5 loaves, and he gets the job done to feed everybody that way. And in Matthew chapter 15, then, he does it again with 4,000 people. It's incredible. He does the same miracle. Different people, same miracle. But here's the deal. It wasn't just about bread. And I think we get caught up, and it is a really cool kind of magic trick to make bread appear out of nowhere and then just feed them. But if that's all Jesus was doing, to be honest with you, maybe it wasn't that great of a miracle. And I know that's bad to say. Jesus, he always did good miracles. But I don't think it was that great of a miracle if all Jesus is trying to do is feed some people. Why? Because 12 hours later, they're hungry again. I'm getting hungry myself, talking about all this bread. 12 hours later, they're hungry again. So what's the point? Is Jesus just trying to temporarily meet a physical need? No, the truth is it's not about bread. As Jesus feeds the 5,000 in Matthew chapter 14, he feeds the 4,000 in Matthew chapter 15. Matthew chapter 16, he explains it. I want to look there real quick. Matthew chapter 16, verse 9. His disciples didn't get it. They thought it was just about eating bread. Matthew chapter 16, verse 9, Jesus says to his disciples, "Do you still not understand? Don't you remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many basketfuls you've gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? How is it you don't understand? I'm not talking about bread. But be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." Then they understood he was not telling them to guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Here's the point, and I think it's so important for us to know today, is your daily bread is only as good as your daily source. Your daily bread is only as good as your daily source. We all have needs. I've mentioned that. And the source of the one who fulfills those needs is your master. So your daily bread is only as good as your daily source. And I think what we struggle with as we consider the Scriptures is we get so consumed with our needs. We get so consumed with the fact that I need this. I need food, I need water, I need clothing, and it's true. That's right. I need to be loved. I need to feel security. I need some type of emotional needs to be met. You're right. We do. And we get so caught up in how those needs are going to get met. I think sometimes we forget who is going to be the one that meets those needs. To the point where we even may chase temporary fulfillment of those needs just so we can feel good, regardless of who that source might be. The disciples didn't get it. Jesus had to explain it to them in Matthew chapter 16. What's really cool is, though, the early Christians in the 4th and 5th century, I think they got it. Let me give you an example. Some of you know I went on a trip to Israel earlier this month. Pastor Brad led us in a group from our church, and we were able to tour the Holy Land. And we spent a little bit of time on the Mediterranean coast, but mainly we spent our time around the Sea of Galilee up north in that region, and then also in Jerusalem down south. Now, Jerusalem obviously has some pretty spectacular holy sites. It's really cool. But I got to be honest with you, my favorite region to just hang out in was the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is beautiful. If there were no holy sites there at all, people will still go there as the destination just because of its beauty. It's this sea, not a huge sea, but it's a sea, a body of water, and it's surrounded by mountains. And don't think Rocky Mountains with snow cap, just think hills, but it's just a beautiful place, and no wonder Jesus spent time there in his ministry. And we talk about the feeding of the 5,000. It happened somewhere along the Sea of Galilee there. And there is a church there called the Church of the Multiplication. It sounds better than it is. It's not about multiplication. But it's called the Church of the Multiplication. It's better than the Church of Division anyway. And in the Church of Multiplication, it's a landmark that kind of marks the spot, their best guess at where they think the feeding of the 5,000 took place. And a church was built there around the 4th, 5th century. And to commemorate that spot, there's a really well-known, really famous mosaic. Now, mosaic is a bunch of little pieces that make up a bigger picture. They're all over the Holy Land. I called them Byzantine Legos because it's pretty much what they are. They're these just little things, and you can see here is the mosaic, and this was on the floor, again, from the 4th or 5th century, a mosaic at the Church of the Multiplication. And what do you see here? On either side, you see a fish. So we have 2 fish, and then we've got this basket. And just, you can see in the top of the basket, there's an opening, and you see 4 little circles with the cross on them. 4 loaves. So 4 loaves of bread and 2 fish to commemorate at the Church of the Multiplication the feeding of the 5,000. Isn't that cool? The little pieces, and it comes from detail, and it's so old. And it's so cool. 2 fish and 4 loaves. There's a problem with that, isn't there? Have you figured it out? 2 fish is good. We got 2 fish up there. That's from the story. But how many loaves were there supposed to be? There's supposed to be 5. They only got 4. They missed 1. Guess who the 5th loaf is? Jesus Christ is the bread of life. And that's what they knew, and that's what they saw. They said, you know what, we can put all 5 in here, but it's not about bread. It's not actually about bread. It's about recognizing that the source of that bread is Jesus Christ. He is the bread of life, it says in John chapter 6. And what an amazing, I'm so thankful for that imagery, and even in the 4th and 5th century, the Christians got it. It's not about bread. It's about the purpose of the bread. It's about the source of the bread. So the source of the bread has to be Jesus Christ. And again, we may be tempted to go out and search for ways in which we can have our needs fulfilled. And as long as they get fulfilled, we can say, I don't care who does the fulfilling. I don't care the source of that. Well, here's the problem. If the source is not Jesus Christ, the source will let you down. Even among friends or family members who love you and are well-being, they're human. They're not perfect. The source of your daily bread matters. The source of your daily bread matters. How are we doing here? Okay, well, listen faster. Here we go. As we've looked at the Church of the Multiplication. What I want to ask you, and I want to tie it in so nicely here. Let's go back to the Israelites, okay? So they were slaves in Egypt, right? This is, I don't know, slavery area. This is slaves in Egypt, okay? And so here is where these people were slaves, and they were in need of deliverance and being saved. They were in need of help. And God swooped in, and he used Moses, and wasn't that awesome? And God says, you know what? I've got a plan for you. I've got this awesome place. It's called the Promised Land. It's flowing with milk and honey, and it's fantastic. And here you are. You're in the wilderness right now, but I've got a cool place for you. And so much in life, I think our understanding of Christianity, unfortunately, happens to be, okay, I need to be saved. And okay, God saved me. That's great. Okay, one day this is going to be good, but for right now, I'm just going to hang out. I'm just going to be in the wilderness right now. And one day I'll get there, and that's going to be awesome. That's going to be really good. But for right now, I'm just going to hang out and wait. I'm going to do my own little thing here. I don't know what that might be, but I'm just going to do life right here. And then one day it's going to be really cool. Can I tell you that's not the Christian journey? It might be a comfortable one, maybe. I don't know, so the wilderness isn't always comfortable. But let me tell you, if God has milk and honey for us here, he's got manna for us here. Okay? If God has something amazing planned for us here, he's got bread of life for us here. And that's on purpose, I think, because milk and honey is not made for here. You ever go on a road trip? You're trying to get somewhere. When you get somewhere, you're going to have a great time. You're going to have good. But on the road trip, when you're getting there, you're just kind of hanging out. Milk and honey is not a good food for the road trip, okay? That makes sense. If you ever have kids, you're going to go on a road trip, throw some honey in the back, see how that goes, right? That is going to be a mess, okay? Don't do that. I advise against that. Kids or dogs, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a mess. The milk and honey, and that's coming. And our glory, the glorification is coming. But for here we are on a journey. Do you have your daily bread? Are your needs being met? Because, and there may be some of us here today who are here and say, God, you got to save me. I'm lost. I'm a slave to all these other things. And I'm going to tell you today, there is an opportunity, there is grace extended to you this morning where you don't have to be a slave anymore. You don't have to be enslaved to whatever those things are that are maybe for now temporarily kind of meeting your needs, but not doing a great job of it. There's deliverance for you today. You don't have to be a slave. And for those of us who have been saved, who know the saving grace of Jesus Christ, and we know one day, man, it's going to be great. One day we're going to heaven. One day it's going to be awesome and promised land flowing with milk and honey, and oh, it's going to be so good. But maybe you're in the wilderness now, and you know what the wilderness is like. And you know you have needs that need to be met. But here we are, and at best we're just trying to get through until we make it there. We're just trying to hold on and find our way through the wilderness, and then maybe God's cheering us on from up there. That's not it. That's not God's plan. Christ is saying to us today, no, when you're here, we pray, give us today our daily bread. And that is available to you today. I'd like Pastor Tim to come. I want us to have an opportunity to respond to this. Because maybe you are over here and maybe you just need God to save you today. There is grace for you and you need to come. And you need to talk to God and have that conversation. Or maybe today you realize, you know what, I'm in the wilderness and I know good things are coming, but God, I've been seeking for fulfillment of my needs from other sources. I've been out there and I've been trying to either do it on my own or rely on someone else. And sometimes that works for a little while. There's no grace there. There's no fulfillment there. It doesn't satisfy. If you and God need to have that conversation today, the altar is open. Or maybe you just need to say, God, you know what? I'm in the wilderness. And I'm wandering around, and it's not supposed to take that long, but it's taken a long time. God is saying, no, I've got your daily bread. I've got what you need to sustain you for the journey. And it's not a promise that it's going to be easy. It's not a promise of great things in the promised land yet. It's a promise that God is there, that He is the bread of life. If you need that bread today, won't you come?